This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good Friday afternoon. Thanks for checking in. After nearly 2 weeks on the picket lines, an end is in sight to the corrections officers' strike at prisons across New York. The state of New York and the union representing some 13,000 prison guards have reached a tentative deal. That deal still, however, needs ratification by the rank and file. Steve Burns is a fourth-generation CO who joined striking workers yesterday on the picket line.
This entire incident, to cover the thing in a nutshell, is about safety. They want to be safe. They want a little respect.
This newly announced deal suspends for 3 months the HALT Act, which guards complained made their jobs unsafe. There's also concessions being made by the state to ensure the COs don't have to work any more 24-hour shifts.
What we're hoping for, if it concludes, is that there's some meat and potatoes into the disciplinary system as a deterrent. Peace through strength, right?
The National Guard will remain in a support role for now. They will begin to draw down at prisons statewide as the striking prison guards return to the job. An important step is playing out today in Washington in the push to end the years-long war in Ukraine.
I think it's moving along pretty rapidly. It'll either be fairly soon or it won't be at all.
President Trump welcomed Ukraine's leader to the White House this morning.
We're going to get along really well. I have a lot of respect for him.
Mr. Trump changing his tune on Volodymyr Zelensky after last week calling him a dictator. Zelensky's in town today to sign a mineral rights deal that is lucrative for us.
We'll be digging. We'll be digging.
The president is demanding that deal to reimburse the American taxpayer who's footed the bill for much of the war.
The next step we're making is toward a very achievable ceasefire. We hope that can happen quickly.
Victoria Coates is with the Heritage Foundation.
This notion that Ukraine is somehow being sidelined or ignored in this process, it's ridiculous. And they're going to sign this historic deal that gives the United States a vested interest in Ukraine.
Mr. Trump will host a news conference with Ukraine's leader later this afternoon. What killed Gene Hackman, the death of the legendary actor and that of his wife, are being called suspicious. Their partly mummified remains discovered this week in their home in New Mexico. Chanley Painter at Fox News.
We are hearing from Hackman's youngest daughter now telling the Daily Mail that her 95-year-old father was, quote, in very good physical condition up until his passing. The Oscar winner and his wife, Betsy, along with one of their dogs, were found dead at their Santa Fe, New Mexico home Wednesday after a maintenance worker grew concerned after not seeing the couple for 2 weeks.
Both Hackman and his wife had been dead for quite a while, according to the sheriff. They were found in separate rooms of the home. Several spilled pills were found near her body. Forensic expert Joseph Scott Morgan.
The dog, for me, is kind of an oddity. I'd like to know if the dog died as a result, for instance, of dehydration. I've heard one report the dog was caged up, but then you have the other two animals that are still alive. And why was that front door open?
While the front door was open, there were no signs of forced entry or theft. Also, there was no sign of trauma to the bodies and no signs of a gas leak. Not yet. A federal judge says federal workers let go by the Trump administration may have been fired illegally. Here's reporter Jennifer Kuiper.
Judge William Alsup in San Francisco has ordered the Office of Personnel Management to inform certain federal agencies that it had no authority to order the firings of probationary employees.
The judge's ruling does not reinstate those workers who've already been fired. Another court hearing on the matter is set for mid-March. Yesterday, hundreds were laid off at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, including meteorologists who do local forecasts for the National Weather Service. Air traffic controllers in training are getting a pay raise.
Speaking at the nation's only air traffic controller academy in Oklahoma City, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced a pay increase of more than $5 an hour to almost $23 an hour.
Bring more great qualified students into this academy and fill up our towers.
Duffy wants to fast-track the highest-scoring applicants into the academy. He says many air traffic control facilities are short-staffed and their technology is outdated.
CBS's Michael Wallace. President Trump will reportedly make English the official language of the U.S. He's expected to sign today an executive order to that effect. The U.S. has never had an official national language in its nearly 250-year history. How about that? Iowa will soon become the first state to remove so-called gender identity protections from the state's civil rights code.
The removal of civil rights from a population that already suffers from disparate health outcomes is a public health concern, and it will have real consequences for real people.
It would not be wise to build our house on the slippery slope of the sand using fluid definitions and feelings.
Republican Governor Kim Reynolds says she will sign that bill into law. A new CBS News YouGov survey shows most of us are not happy about the price we pay for the stuff we buy.
Most Americans, 77%, say their incomes are not keeping up with inflation, and most report prices for the things they buy are either going up or staying the same, not coming down. In addition to being concerned about the ability to buy food and groceries, 70% are concerned about their ability to save money.
Pollster Jennifer DePinto, today is National Skip the Straw Day, and reporter Bree Tennis tells us why that's such a big deal.
500 million plastic straws are used in the U.S. every day, and after one use, they end up in the landfill or in the ocean where they break down into smaller pieces of plastic. Those small bits are then eaten by birds and fish and other creatures in the sea. Our Last Straw Coalition predicts by the year 2050 there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish. So for today, skip the straw and love the environment. I'm Bree Tennis.
All right, Bree, that may be, but President Trump recently signed an executive order that brings back the plastic straw. Still to come on the Noon Report, spiritual awakening in Johnstown, why phones and schools don't mix, and local reaction to the measles outbreak.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, calling for a blast of winter weather as we head into the weekend. I'll have those forecast details coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. As mentioned at the top of the broadcast, a nearly 2-week-old prison guard strike could soon be ending in New York. The state and the union that represents 13,000 corrections officers have come to terms on a deal. That deal must still be ratified by the rank and file. This deal would suspend for 3 months the HALT Act, which guards argue makes prisons unsafe. It would also make concessions so COs are not forced to work 24-hour shifts. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was in Bradford County Thursday discussing workforce shortages in rural communities. The governor's especially concerned about the impact that is having in the healthcare industry.
One of those key areas that my budget invests in is on rural healthcare and making sure that we've got the personnel we need in our rural communities to keep people healthy and safe.
Dr. Latika Davis-Jones is the Secretary of the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
We know that burnout is real. The people on the front lines of the crises that are healers and helpers are carrying a heavy load. They are saving lives, but they need support too.
In urban Pennsylvania counties, there's one primary care physician for every 222 residents. For rural counties, that number is one physician for every 522 residents. The first death from measles in this country in more than a decade is sending shockwaves through New York's healthcare community.
These tragedies can be prevented, and they need to be prevented.
That is State Health Commissioner Dr. Jim McDonald reacting to the news that an unvaccinated child died from measles in Lubbock, Texas.
There's a lot of reasons why people are hesitant about vaccines. Some of them are steeped in culture, but too many of them are steeped in misinformation.
Those opposed to vaccines often cite medical or religious reasons. Dr. Houmen Homani is a board-certified expert on infectious diseases.
This is really important to keep in mind, is that the rate of measles outbreaks in the U.S. has plummeted significantly compared to where we were a decade or two ago.
New York's overall vaccination rate hovers around 80%. 40%. Yates County has the lowest vaccination rate of any in the state at just 56%. Pennsylvania's largest school district is refusing to play ball with the Trump administration when it comes to the trans ban in girls' sports. In Philadelphia, transgender athletes are still being allowed to compete in female athletics in violation of this federal order. This week, the PIAA said it would comply with the Trump ruling designed to save women's sports for women. Johnstown, Pennsylvania has one of the highest poverty rates in the country, yet a spiritual awakening is happening there. Ray Streets is pastor of the Journey Church in Johnstown.
I'm excited about Johnstown. Why can't we be the epicenter of revival for our country and for our state?
Still, with drugs, joblessness, and poverty running rampant in Johnstown, the Reverend Doug Black with the Liberty Grace Church admits there's a lingering sense of hopelessness.
People kind of expect bad things. They've grown up in this generational expectation that nothing good's going to happen in Johnstown.
In the midst of the hardship, faith-based programs like Bible to School are stepping up to inspire the next generation in Johnstown.
So many of the kids have never been told that Jesus loves them. We have conversations with them. Do you know that you are valued? Do you know that you are loved? And it's like they are hearing this for the very first time.
Stacy Novak with Bible to School, which offers off-campus Bible classes to students in the 2nd through 4th grade. Statistics show less than 20% of Johnstown's residents routinely attend church.
We know handfuls of families that have started attending church as a result of their children participating. So it doesn't just reach the children, it reaches their siblings, their parents, grandparents.
Johnstown resident Katie Green has faith that God will restore the city, starting with its children.
I have always felt very strongly that within our program, we have little Davids and we have little Esthers, that God is rising up for a time like this.
That audio is courtesy of the Christian Broadcasting Network. Local pastors, by the way, meet every Wednesday to pray for spiritual renewal in Johnstown. Police in York County, Pennsylvania, advising motorists today expect delays for the funeral procession of fallen officer Andrew Duarte. The 30-year-old was killed during a hostage situation at a hospital last week. His funeral is this afternoon at the Living Word Community Church in York. New York's largest teachers union hosted a conference Thursday in Syracuse. It was all about ways to encourage students to disconnect from their cell phones. John Kurla is president of the North Syracuse Education Association.
It isn't just our schools that are struggling with this, it's our entire community. The difference is that we feel the impact of that, and as we're bringing kids through the education system, we need to assure that when they graduate that they have the basic competence of a New York State graduate without the interference of their cell phone constantly dragging them along the way.
Governor Hochul wants to ban cell phones in school during the school day due to the impact they are having on students' mental health as well as academic performance. A central Pennsylvania elementary school will remain closed after an incident 2 years ago that forced students from the building. An update next from Family Life's Brian Query.
Southern Huntington County School Board members voted 8-0 this week to keep Spring Farms Elementary School closed for an additional school year. In January of 2023, the school was shut down after a leak of 7,600 gallons of heating fuel. This forced the relocation of students, some to the high school and some to the middle school. The Department of Environmental Protection's investigation is staying open to determine exactly where the oil ended up, but so far it has shown no signs of water contamination. With the school board vote, students will not be back into the building until at least 2026. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, Brian, thank you for that. Sports is next. We call it the 2-minute drill right here on the Family Life Noon Report.
Steph
Curry. What more can you say about the guy except to say he still got it? Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Steph Curry erupted for 56 points last night, and his team needed all of them as Golden State overcame a 17-point deficit to beat the Orlando Magic 121-115. Just before the half, Curry took an inbounds pass and launched a 56-footer, and he buried it at the buzzer. Curry scored 25 of his 56 points in an 8-minute stretch in the third quarter. He finished with 12 three-pointers, the most by a player this season. He was 16 of 25 from the field, 12 of 12 from the line. It was his 14th career 50-point game and 9th one at the age of 30 or older, which is the most in NBA history. The guy can still shoot. Elsewhere on the hardwood, the Bucks, Mavs, Pelicans, and Lakers picked up victories. On the ice, the Carolina Hurricanes scored 3 times in the first period, and the Sabres never recovered, falling 5-2. Alex Tuch and J.J. Peterka scored for Buffalo. The Islanders snapped their 4-game skid, beating the Bruins 2-1 in Boston. Alexander Romanov and Kyle Palmieri both lit the lamp for the Isles. Penguins got some revenge against the Flyers, 5-4 in overtime. Evgeny Malkin scored the game winner just 63 seconds into the extra period. He also found the back of the net in regulation. Erik Karlsson also tallied 2 goals as Pittsburgh snapped their 4-game losing streak. Elsewhere on the ice, your winners: the Canadiens, Blue Jackets, Lightning, Panthers, Blues, Predators, Utah, Vegas, and Anaheim. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, man, thank you kindly. Still to come on the Noon Report for a Friday: why pot is bad business, how Planned Parenthood is failing women, and a rare planetary parade. It happens tonight.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Over the last few years, there's been quite a reckoning in America about education. So much so, in fact, that the next few years could bring radical changes, with more and more parents opting out of public schools by the millions, in fact, and choosing homeschooling, private, and hybrid alternatives. Frustration with lengthy COVID closures triggered a reaction to much bigger problems, especially things like ideological indoctrination, falling test scores, and administrators and school boards who treated parents as if they had no right whatsoever to know what their children are learning. And so, changes in the air, even, it seems, for the Department of Education. On paper, public education is run by the states and the counties, but since President Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education in 1979, the federal government has played an increasingly intrusive and expensive and outsized role. Last year, the nation's report card from the federal government found that math and reading scores in the U.S. are at their lowest levels in decades. Whole school districts nationwide are described as failing and dropout factories, and at even elite colleges, professors have students who are unable to read a book. A new statement attempts to provide an alternative vision for education in America, one that could guide Congress and the Trump administration in the promise of big change. It's called the Phoenix Declaration, and it's a new statement organized by the Heritage Foundation in cooperation with dozens of other conservative think tanks, colleges, leaders, and public officials. The statement begins by affirming that, and I quote, "Too many schools have lost their way, failing to shape character and instill virtues necessary for students to become self-governing citizens. Thus," it continues, "it is the responsibility of America's parents, educators, and policymakers to recommit ourselves to the central purposes of education," end quote. Parents and educators, and anyone who's concerned about the educational future of our nation, should take the time to read and consider the claims of the Phoenix Declaration. In a time where our educational system is so obviously failing, this kind of robust and morally informed vision for education is long overdue. With Congress and the White House and so many organizations, and more importantly, so many parents ready to act, this is a moment for real and meaningful change. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you. Let's head outside next. Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Light weather forecast for this afternoon. Just mainly cloudy with some light rain and wet snow. High temps 30s and low 40s. Becoming very windy tonight. Rain and snow showers and temperatures rising early, tumbling late. Much colder tomorrow. We'll have snow showers, blowing snow. Temperatures will start today mostly in the 30s, the 40s in eastern Pennsylvania, but tumble through the day. Bitterly cold on Sunday, partly sunny with areas of local lake snow and flurries, and high temperatures in the teens and 20s.
Thank you kindly, Kevin. It is Friday, folks. Congratulations. You made it the 28th of February. And this is the Noon Report. And welcome back to another edition of Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire at New York Families. Well, Jason, I want to begin with you this week. Those DOGE cuts are a big deal in D.C. right now, and New York's governor wants to capitalize. She's launched this statewide Your Hired initiative where she'd hire fired federal workers. This smacks of politics on the surface. Do you think it'll work?
I don't know how effective it's going to be. The state has been struggling to fill its workforce for some time. In part, that's because state jobs are not as financially beneficial as they used to be as new tiers and contracts have come out. But she's also doing this in the face of what's going on with the correctional facilities right now. And so just the public optics of trying to cover both of those is making it very difficult from a PR perspective.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, Michael, big news in sports, high school sports in Pennsylvania. The PIAA, the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association, high school sports governing authority, says it will align with President Trump's executive order that bans biological boys in girls' sports. Your reaction to that bit of news this week?
Well, I guess number one, I'd just say it's about time because that's a very popular position with the public to keep boys and girls sports separate. There are some school districts that look like they're going to try to resist what PIAA and what the Trump administration is saying on this issue. Philadelphia notably said they're planning to still allow transgenders to participate in sports. And so it's something we're continuing to watch. We encourage people to go to our independencelaw.org website to find out more detail on putting good policies in place in the local school districts.
Yeah, New York Times just had a poll. Almost 80% support the trans ban on girls' sports. You try to get 80% of people to agree on much. It's not easy these days, but they agree on this. Jason, let's talk marijuana. It's surpassed alcohol in terms of daily use among Americans. Cannabis use disorder, a rapidly growing addiction. The number of young people smoking weed has doubled in the past 20 years. I could go on and on with statistics about this. It's been 4 years now. Hard to believe. It's been 4 years since New York went down this road, legalizing marijuana. What has been the net effect of that?
Well, if you ask the state, they'll point to revenue and taxation. They'll point to issues of racial justice. But in reality, I think it has become just a scourge on society. I mean, anywhere you go, there is not just the smell of the marijuana, but we have so lowered the stigma around marijuana use that it has increased use among adolescents, particularly young men. And it's just really problematic from a health perspective as well. So marijuana is not good. And we just send the wrong message when the state goes ahead, legitimizes it by investing in the taxation that goes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the drug driving and the problems there. Michael, you have been raising awareness about this for years. Why do policymakers continually insist that this is a harmless drug? What is it going to take to convince them otherwise?
Those that insist that marijuana is harmless are doing so out of either true ignorance or willful ignorance, because the facts tell us just the opposite, as Jason just talked about. I mean, the evidence in states across America that have legalized, including New York, demonstrate the severe harms, mental health, severe youth addiction rates, impaired driving, organized crime, and more. So I would say the most effective way to convince fence-sitting lawmakers to oppose legalization is to have big numbers of constituent contacts, visits, phone calls, emails, telling them to vote no on marijuana. It's either going to be the big marijuana lobbyists or the common sense voice of the people that win this fight.
Yeah, and we'll see where it goes in Pennsylvania. I know a lot of people praying as that battle begins again in Harrisburg. Jason, prison reform continues to be a big issue in New York. Of course, we've got these protests that are going going on at the corrections facilities all over the state. What do you think of Governor Hochul's leadership during this crisis?
Well, I think she's been tested, and she's showing a failure of leadership in this moment. Every time the corrections officers are saying they want to be heard, they want their safety addressed, the thumb of the governor and the state is coming down heavier on them. The governor is pushing harder and harder on people that are already stressed, and they're very legitimate concerns.
Yeah. Is she playing hardball with the COs because of what happened to Robert Brooks, in your opinion? I know they're totally different situations, but it's hard not to see one without seeing it through the lens of the other.
I don't know that she's playing hardball with them in that regard, but the legislature certainly is. One of the reasons that they do not want to repeal the HALT Act is the legislature has dug in, and because of Robert Brooks, they are saying we are not going to repeal this, but it really is problematic. I'm seeing numbers as high as 9 out of 10 corrections officers are on strike. That's leaving some of these prison populations completely unguarded.
We'll see where it goes, but a very tenuous situation. Jason, the New York Times did a story this month on the botched care that many women are getting at Planned Parenthood. Why can't they get their act together when it comes to women's health?
You know, it was stunning to see even the New York Times cover that kind of a story from that angle, dealing with Planned Parenthood, when they've always been a protector of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
But one of the points that article brought out was that Planned Parenthood, in their bylaws, prioritizes the politics over essentially the patient care. And that's part of the problem. When they're funding so much of the money that is coming to the organization into the political system that continues to fund Planned Parenthood, they are not giving the funds to true patient care. Now, I'm being very kind in how I say that. I don't know how you can be at Planned Parenthood and say that you're engaging in patient care when you are engaged in the action of taking innocent human life.
Well, Michael, Planned Parenthood likes to say it does other things other than abortions, but it doesn't do anything as much as it does abortions. Now, Planned Parenthood is trying to infiltrate school board elections in Pennsylvania. What's the strategy here?
Well, Bob, it's both a clever and sinister strategy that Planned Parenthood's employing to get their grips on our children, to promote their anti-God and perverse sexual and gender ideology, which then encourages behavior that serves as a feeder for both their massive abortion business, but also for their growing transgender cross-sex hormone drug business. About 15 years ago, we at Pennsylvania Family Institute helped defeat a Planned Parenthood-sponsored statewide sex education mandate bill. So they don't have that statewide mandate, so now they're looking to go to local school board elections to impose their curriculum and worse on our children.
Yeah, going from abortion to the sex change industry, that is the future Planned Parenthood is hoping for. Jason, Legislative Day is fast approaching. Mark your calendar, Tuesday, March 18th. Tell us why it's worth the trip to Albany for that event.
Yeah, we live in a day and an age here in state politics where really activism is the method of communicating with elected officials. And there are groups that travel there by the busload from all over the state for various issues, for every issue, really. And this is that time of year when believers, followers of Jesus Christ, come to the Capitol and let the state legislators know their position on the issues. We are dangerously close to the passage of assisted suicide in this state. This is an opportunity for people to make their statement to say, we do not support state-sanctioned suicide. We have a continuing transgender issue here in our state. While many states are moving away from that, we're digging in the heels here in New York, and someone needs to stand up for these kids. There are so many issues that need to be heard, and this is an opportunity with a collective voice to rise up and say, the legislature, listen to our concerns.
Amen. And then, Michael, finally, for our more seniored citizens, you're hosting an event for grandparents coming up Saturday, March 29th. Why have grandparents become so vital to the overall success of families, and maybe now more so than ever?
Well, in God's design, extended families have always played a role in the well-being of children, and grandparents certainly is part of that. But with the pressures and cultural influences that come against children in today's Pennsylvania and today's America, we think equipping grandparents with biblical guidance on how to effectively impact their grandchildren for the gospel and for their flourishing is a great opportunity. And that's why we're hosting pastor and author Dr. Larry McCall to present the Grandparenting with Grace seminar there on Saturday, March 29th in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. As a grandpa myself, I've been through the seminar, and I want many others to benefit as well.
Yeah, amen. If folks want to attend that seminar, Michael, and say, hey, I got a Saturday free, I'd like to go and learn how to be a better grandma or grandpa, where can they find you online?
PAFamily.org.
And get registered for Legislative Day 2025. Fast approaching in Albany. It's Tuesday, March 18th. Jason, where can folks find you online?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Capital Connection comes your way Fridays during the Noon Report. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature along with all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. An Arctic cold front slicing through the Midwest this afternoon will be our fate tonight and tomorrow, bringing with it a plunge in temperatures, gusting winds, and some snow. For this afternoon, though, just mainly cloudy with some light rain and wet snow reaching parts of western New York and northwest Pennsylvania. High temps 30s and low 40s. Becoming very windy tonight, rain and snow showers, and temperatures rising early, tumbling late. Much colder tomorrow. We'll have snow showers, blowing snow. Temperatures will start today mostly in the 30s, the 40s in eastern Pennsylvania, but tumble through the day. Bitterly cold on Sunday, partly sunny with areas of local lake snow and flurries, and high temperatures in the teens and 20s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Finally, at noon today, a rare planetary parade will happen tonight. Don't miss it. Stargazers will be able to see 7, count them, 7 planets form a line in the night sky. Just after dark, Mercury will join Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Venus, and Saturn in the western sky. Saturn and Neptune will be the hardest to see because they'll be closest to the horizon. You'll need binoculars or a telescope to see Uranus and Neptune. But yeah, 7 planets visible in the night sky. Happens tonight, and that's our world. The world we live in, Friday, February 28th. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.